Thanks for joining us on this bonus episode of LOJ today. So this does remind me a lot of T. Boone Pickens, who gave, I think over the course of his life, it was like $600 million to Oklahoma State over the course of things. And he gave a huge donation toward the end of his life. Now, he was older, I believe, than what David Booth is at this point in time, but just really wanted to see success for Oklahoma State. And David Booth is now synonymous with KU athletics, with KU football, with the donations here that he has provided. But again, you're talking $300 million here. So $75 million of that to the Gateway District. What is the Gateway District? Well, that is the idea of the stuff that is going to be around next to the KU football stadium, right? So you're talking restaurants, you're talking shops, they've even talked about having like office space, doctor's offices, whatever, that are going to be there that are not just businesses during the games, but are businesses that are operating, I guess, whatever, Monday through Friday or Monday through Saturday, Monday through Sunday throughout the weekend. That is something that, they obviously needed money to fund, and boom, okay, they're on to that next step with this donation here. Now, the other part of it, and again, that part is not as interesting to me. It's a lot of money, and it's a huge donation, so shout out to David Booth for doing that. Again, that's not really my cup of tea, that part. The part that is interesting to me is where that other $225 million is going. That other $225 million, I think Duke has done something like this, where Duke has like these funds that they are putting away, whatever you want to say, the stock market or in different investment opportunities that give them money that they're able to use on whatever, rev share, NIL, like different opportunities that you could kind of go to. I guess not NIL, that have to be, coming from a business. But basically, to me, this is something where if you're talking $225 million and KU is able to put it in a fund where, who knows what they're going to be able to make in terms of the returns. But let's say it was even something like 5% a year on $225 million, right? And again, if you're talking 225 million, like you're probably, David Booth operates an investment firm. Like they're going to have like the best people on this, where realistically, and especially, with the market the way it is, it can be up and down, but you would think that they're going to have the best people on it, that maybe it's more than 5%, right? But if we're even just talking 5% a year that you make on $225 million, that's $11.2 million that you're just making off of interest in this fund. Now, if you're pulling more than the 11 million, the number on the interest goes down as you're pulling more, right? You pull more and more, the interest number goes down and what you're making back. But point being, you're talking about, if we just don't even include interest, that would essentially, rev share is what, $20.5 million that you can give to all your athletics programs, however you want to divvy out per season as a college football program or as a college athletics program. That basically means that you are covering, $250 million. That basically means that you are covering 12 and a half seasons before you get involved in the interest of the rev share for KU. Now you add on all that interest, and this could be something that spans, 20, 30 years for KU in terms of David Booth has just covered the next, again, 20 or 30 years for KU in the rev share department. And then by the time you get to the end of that, maybe the college landscape is different. Maybe you've accrued money from other areas, other donors to, make up those future years as well. But that is such a gigantic deal. Think about what that means that KU can do with its other money, so to speak, right? If David Booth has given you enough money that you can check off spending all of the money, and to be clear, not every school is going to be able to hit the full $20.5 million. If this gives Kansas the leg up in terms of, okay, we can spend the full $20.5 million, however they want to divvy it out. But in addition to that, that means every other cent that gets donated into Kansas can go to the other things Kansas needs. That can be brand new facilities in some different sports. That can be the continuation of the new stadium, the new booth for KU football. That can be to going to funding even more in terms of, hey, instead of you giving $2 million donation, why don't you give a $2 million NIL deal to this player that we think is going to be a stud and we really need him? Basically, they will have a fund used for, I suppose, paying players. That stuff will be checked off the list and completed. Whenever the stadium gets done, which you would think is going to be within the next handful of years, that will be checked off. And that means that all future donations, once you do finish the football stadium, are just going to go to those sorts of things. So whenever the stadium is done, that means all future donations become the cherry on top in terms of your donations, right? Just like think about the potential that gives KU, that all other KU donations could go straight to NIL building rosters, could go to finishing other facilities like, say, re-upping the baseball stadium, for instance. It's basically, to like give an analogy here, thanks to the ginormous hand in funding that David Booth is kind of providing you here. The analogy here is that you, as a person, finished off paying your house and finished off paying your car, and you finished paying off all your, your loans that you kind of have, right? And now all your income that you're building in, i.e. in this case, all the other donations Kansas is getting in, you can use on fun things like a fun vacation to Italy, or buying a boat, buying a jet ski, buying a membership to a golf club. That's equivalent to what Kansas is going to be able to do, where they're saying, hey, we already have our basics, let out. So now all this other donation money we get, that's going to go to getting our future quarterback in the transfer portal when our good one goes off to the pros a year earlier than we were expecting to. Or that can go to our future small forward who we think can be the difference in us making a Final Four. Or that can go to us paying an offensive coordinator that we, think we were going to lose to another job, but we're able to double his salary to stick around with the program. And so I'm not saying KU is going to compete necessarily with the oil money that the Texas Techs of the world have, or maybe you say that like Texas Tech is tier 1 of spending ability in the Big 12. But if you're talking tier 2, and maybe Kansas can be in tier 1, led by David Booth now, but if you're at least talking tier 2, you are talking the Kansas Jayhawks on that next tier. And we've seen that. And you see some of the revenue figures that are coming out, some of the money that is being spent on merchandise among teams in the Big 12. Like Kansas is continually at the top of these lists in the Big 12. Now you got this funding to support it. Now you got the brand new football stadium that is going to continue to be built and funded by guys like David Booth. This has legitimate repercussions, not just like if Kansas stays in the Big 12, you're one of the big fish now. You are spending like that is the case. If you do end up getting the opportunity to leave for another conference, this is probably something that is why. If you do end up getting an opportunity to eventually one day leave for the Big Ten or the SEC, this is probably one of those, pivotal moments that you could point to and say, yeah, that would probably be why. And so you bet your butt this helps Kansas in possible future college football realignment. But even if they don't leave, even if this just does help you stay up top on the Big 12 pecking order, so to speak, that is a big deal too. And so just a gigantic deal overall, an unbelievable sacrifice by David Booth. And by the way, Travis Goff might just end up being the best athletic director in Kansas athletics history with what he is doing, has done with the hiring of coaches, the early returns on those, the combination of where he's gotten these programs and how he is fundraising this thing. So hats off to Travis Goff, hats off to Doug Gerard, and obviously hats off to David Booth, $300 million. All right, some of the other latest news that, I don't know, this feels like the news. It is the news. I'll get to some of that next. Thanks for joining us on Locked On Jayhawks. Don't forget you make Locked On College Football, Locked On College Basketball your second listen every day. And don't forget to check out and thank you to the everydayers who are to do our normal content each and every day. Some latest news to finish things off. KU women's soccer begins the season pre-ranked 25th in the country. Of course, if you remember, they had a solid season. It was in year 1 of Nate Lee till the end of the regular season, and then they got hot. They won the Big 12 tournament. That was awesome. They go to the NCAA tournament. So now bigger expectations for the full year ahead for Nate Lee in year 2 with KU women's soccer, and cool to see them preseason ranked there. Sky's obviously the limit for what this program can be with. That's the really cool thing that like Kansas City is an epicenter for like you look at the women's sports that KU, has done very well in previous years, women's soccer and KU volleyball, or volleyball in general. Kansas City is like actually an epicenter for recruiting for both of those sports, for women's soccer and women's volleyball, which gives Kansas a high potential in both. And obviously we've seen that with volleyball, and we've seen that year, the occasional year with tournament appearances here and there for KU women's soccer. But I think Nate Lee is going to get them to be a consistent power in the Big 12. KU women's hoops, by the way, they're going to be getting one of 3 visits from a class of 2027 5-star center in Eve Long. That could be a big deal for KU. They've really ramped up recruiting here of late, and it seems like that's something that they're going to be able to keep rolling. And you think Samaya Nichols, you think about a couple of the top end to high 4-stars or 5-star recruits they have coming in on this year's team. So, to even be involved and continue to have those opportunities moving forward is going to be a big deal for Brandon Schneider and the KU women's program. And then the last bit of news, it was announced today that injury reports, basically status reports, are going to be a thing in the Big 12 now moving forward. Awesome news from our perspective. Obviously, I'd imagine this is a little bit like gambling related, right? Because the gambling companies are like, hey, we want injury reports so people can be able to bet on the games and know what's going on in here and there. And that is going to make these leagues, these schools, even more money because they can do those things. From our perspective, this is amazing news because when we do our game previews, now we can actually point to and be like, this guy's questionable, this guy's doubtful, this guy's probable. We can talk about it throughout the week that, this player now got listed as questionable. What does that mean? Are they okay, right? And the players are getting paid now. Like, I've always thought, like, I don't know. I get coaches probably don't like this because they don't want to share this information. But if the other team has to share it too, it's not an advantage. And like, guess what? The best teams and players in the world in the NFL have been sharing their injury reports for years. So the college teams and coaches, they're going to be just fine doing it too. That's going to do it for this episode of Locked On Jayhawks. You can find our show anywhere you get your podcast, including on our YouTube page where you can like and subscribe to the show. David Booth, if you would like to sponsor the show, I will be accepting sponsorships from Mr. Booth. All right, we'll see you next time for another edition of Locked On Jayhawks.